"Pretend to be my wife for $1,000, he said with a smirk meant to hide the loneliness in his eyes. She looked up from the coffee pot, voice barely a whisper. "No amount of money can buy what you've already lost." The morning light fell through the glass walls of Daniel Reid's penthouse office like judgment, sharp, cold, and impossible to escape. He didn't notice it anymore. Not the skyline, not the awards on the shelf, not even the reflection that stared back at him from the window. Success looked impressive until you realized it came with silence. He scrolled through another contract, another acquisition, another number. His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Sir, your brother's wedding is this weekend. RSVP." Daniel's jaw tightened. "No, your mother asked if you're bringing anyone." He hesitated. "Tell her I'll figure it out. Hi, my beautiful family. I have missed you all. Missed all the experiences we've had together. It's been a rough ride as we're currently battling some technical issues, but trust me, we're getting everything back and running. So stick around. I need your support now more than ever. Thank you for sticking around with me. If you're already hooked in for today's story and ready to enjoy it, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one. And you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin." He'd said that before, every year, every holiday, every family gathering. "Figure it out" had become code for avoid it entirely. Beneath the polished suits and precision, Daniel Reid was a man who had mastered control, but not connection. Once, he'd loved someone. Once, he believed money could fix heartbreak. Now he knew better, and that knowledge had turned him into a ghost with perfect posture. Across the city, in a small diner that smelled of burnt coffee and resilience, Lila Grant tied her apron for the third shift in a row. Her hands ached, her feet were blistered, and her hair was pulled into a messy bun that had long given up on perfection. But when she smiled at customers, it wasn't forced. Lila believed kindness was currency, one she never ran out of, even when her wallet said otherwise. "Lila," her coworker whispered, balancing a tray, "that guy in the corner's been staring at you for 10 minutes. He's kind of intimidating." Lila glanced over. A man in a tailored suit sat in the corner booth, his phone face down, his expression unreadable. There was something about him, like he didn't belong in a place with chipped mugs and flickering lights. "Probably waiting for someone," Lila murmured, grabbing the coffee pot. Her nerves hummed as she approached. "Refill?" she asked softly. Daniel looked up, and for a second, forgot to speak. She wasn't striking in the magazine cover sense. Her beauty was quieter, something in the steadiness of her gaze, the way she didn't flinch under his stare. He cleared his throat. "Sure." When she poured, a drop of coffee splashed on his wrist. She gasped, reaching for a napkin. "I'm so sorry." "It's fine," he said, but his voice softened. Their fingers brushed for half a second, long enough for him to feel warmth he hadn't realized he missed. Later, when he left cash on the table, she noticed something unusual. $100 exactly, for a $7 check. She frowned, picked it up, and jogged after him. "Sir, hey, you left too much." He stopped just outside the diner's door, turning with a faint smirk. "Consider it a tip." "I can't take that much," she said, breathless. "It's not right." Daniel studied her, the city noise fading around them. Most people wouldn't hesitate. "I'm not most people." He held her gaze for a moment too long. Something about her quiet defiance felt grounding. "Then keep it," he murmured almost to himself, "because I think I just met someone real." That night, neither could sleep. Daniel replayed her voice in his mind, soft but steady. Lila stared at her ceiling, wondering why a stranger's eyes made her heart ache in a way she didn't understand. Different worlds. Same emptiness. And fate, impatient, relentless, was already writing the next chapter. Would you have accepted the extra money, or done what Lila did and give it back? Comment below, what defines worth to you, money, pride, or honesty? The bell above the diner door chimed again 3 days later. Lila didn't look up right away. She was mid-order, juggling coffee cups and toast plates. But she felt it. That same quiet shift in the air, the same strange awareness that had lingered since he first walked in. When she turned, Daniel Reid was back. Same suit, same calm posture, but a different kind of energy. Tighter. Restless. His eyes carried sleeplessness behind their blue sheen. He sat in the same booth. Didn't even glance at the menu. Just waited. Lila sighed softly, pressing her order pad against her chest like a shield before approaching. "Back again?" she asked, trying to keep her tone light. "I was in the neighborhood," he replied, though they both knew that wasn't true. The nearest neighborhood he lived in cost more than the entire diner. She smiled politely. "Coffee?" He nodded. "Please. Strong." As she poured, silence pressed between them, not uncomfortable, just heavy with something neither could name. Daniel wasn't sure what had brought him back. Logic had nothing to do with it. The moment he saw her walking toward him, though, coffee pot in hand, hair pulled into that same messy knot, it clicked. She was the first person in years who'd looked at him without wanting something. No agenda. No angle. Just human. That kind of honesty was rare. Addictive, even. He stirred his coffee once, twice. Then, without preamble, he said, "I have a proposition for you." Lila blinked. "A proposition?" He leaned back, studying her reaction like a chess move. "Pretend to be my wife, for one night. A charity gala. I'll pay you $1,000. The words hung there like thunder in still air. For a moment, she thought he was joking. Her lips parted, searching for humor in his expression. But Daniel wasn't smiling. "You're serious," she whispered. "Completely." She laughed once, short and breathless. "Why me?" He shrugged. "You're honest. And you wouldn't try too hard." Her brows furrowed. "You mean I wouldn't embarrass you?" He hesitated. "That's not what I—" "Yes, it is," she said softly. "You think because I work here, I'd be grateful for the money. That I'd play pretend for a night and vanish after. Is that what you think of me?" Daniel's mouth opened, then closed again. Her words sliced through his carefully maintained composure. "No," he said finally, quieter. "I don't think that at all. I just needed someone real." She studied him for a long moment, as if deciding whether to believe him. Then she set down the coffee pot with trembling fingers. "Do you even hear yourself?" she asked, her voice breaking in the middle. "You can't buy real, Mr. Reid. Not with 1,000, not with 1,000,000. A few nearby customers turned their heads, sensing the tension. Daniel glanced away, jaw tightening. He wasn't used to being confronted, especially by someone who didn't know his world. "I didn't mean to offend you," he said, standing slightly. "I just thought—" "That's the problem," she interrupted gently. "You thought money could fix something only kindness can." Her words hit harder than any boardroom defeat he'd ever faced. For the first time in years, Daniel didn't have a comeback. He stared at her, this quiet, trembling waitress with fire in her voice, and for a flicker of a second, he saw himself reflected in her eyes. Not the CEO, not the reputation, just a man desperately trying not to be lonely. She turned away first. "Please leave, Mr. Reid." He nodded slowly, as if conceding to something invisible. "Of course." But before walking out, he reached into his jacket and placed a single business card on the counter. "If you change your mind," he said softly, "the offer stands." Then he left. Lila didn't touch the card for hours. She just stared at it between coffee orders, as though it might burn her fingers. When her shift ended, she finally picked it up. His name, Daniel Reid, CEO, Reid Enterprises, printed in clean, expensive font. Her thumb brushed the edge. Her heart shouldn't have been racing, but it was. She slipped it into her pocket, not because she planned to call, but because she couldn't throw it away. That night, Daniel sat in his car outside the diner long after closing, watching the lights dim one by one. He wasn't sure why he stayed. Maybe he just wanted to understand what kind of woman could turn him down with nothing but truth. For the first time in a long time, Daniel Reid didn't feel powerful. He just felt human. And somewhere inside him, something fragile began to stir. For the next week, Lila buried herself in routine. Double shifts. Endless orders. Forced smiles. Anything to keep her mind too busy to think about him. She told herself she wasn't curious about Daniel Reid, the man with the offer, the smirk, the loneliness behind his eyes. She told herself she didn't care that he hadn't come back. But every time the diner bell rang, Her heart betrayed her with a quick, traitorous flutter. Her co-worker, Jenny, noticed. "You've been somewhere else lately," Jenny teased as they refilled sugar jars. Lila shrugged. "Just tired." "Right," Jenny said, grinning. "Tired of not thinking about the suit guy, maybe?" Lila's cheeks warmed. "It's not like that. He's not my kind of person." Jenny laughed. "And what kind is that?" "The kind who doesn't think he can buy people." But her voice lacked conviction, and Jenny's grin softened. "Just be careful, Lee. Guys like that, they don't mean to hurt you, but they always do." Lila nodded, even though a part of her, the quiet, foolish part, already felt a strange ache she couldn't name. Across the city, Daniel stared at his untouched dinner. His penthouse windows framed the skyline like a cage of light, but the view didn't soothe him. He should have moved on. There were board meetings, investors, deadlines. There were women who would have said yes in a heartbeat. And yet, every face blurred back into hers. Every silence reminded him of her voice. He picked up his phone more than once, thumb hovering over her number, the one he'd asked his assistant to find, against better judgment. He never called. Each time he stopped himself, pride whispering, "She turned you down. Let it go." But logic was losing its war against loneliness. On Friday night, he found himself driving aimlessly, headlights slicing through rain. His car stopped, not by plan, but by instinct, outside the same diner. Through the fogged glass, he saw her. Hair slightly damp, still working, still smiling at customers with that quiet strength that unnerved him. He sat there for 10 minutes before forcing himself to leave. The next morning, Lila arrived to open the diner and found a small envelope slipped under the door. No note, just an elegant embossed card inside. For the coffee. Dr. And a folded check, $1,000. Her breath caught. For a moment, anger flared. How dare he still try to buy something? But beneath that anger was confusion, and something dangerously close to sadness. She tore the check in half. Then again. Tiny pieces fell into the trash. Yet when she walked away, she still carried the card in her pocket. That night, her mother coughed in the next room. Lila sat by her bedside, holding her hand. The medicine was running low. Rent was late. Reality pressed like a weight on her chest. She thought about that check, and for a moment, shame washed through her. Could she really afford pride right now? Her mother stirred. "You okay, sweetheart?" Lila smiled softly. "Yeah, Mom. Just tired." But after her mother drifted back to sleep, Lila whispered to the dark, "Why him? Why now?" Meanwhile, Daniel poured himself another drink he didn't want. He'd been told all his life that control was strength, that emotions were liabilities. But every rule he'd lived by was cracking under the memory of a waitress who had told him no, and made him wish she hadn't. He closed his eyes, pressing his palms together. "You're losing it, Reid." But the truth whispered back, "Maybe you already did." A few days later, fate played its quiet hand again. Daniel's company sponsored a local charity event, one the diner had agreed to cater. Lila didn't know until she arrived, balancing trays and praying for anonymity. Their eyes met across the crowded hall, shock, recognition, then something deeper. Neither moved at first. The world seemed to narrow until it was just them, the billionaire in a tux and the waitress in a white apron, two people pretending not to be changed. Lila turned away first, cheeks burning. Daniel exhaled, steadying himself. "Mr. Reid," one of his colleagues said. "You know her." Daniel's gaze lingered on Lila's retreating figure. "Not yet," he murmured. That night ended without words between them, but the silence said everything. Both would lie awake again, wondering if resistance still meant strength, or just fear. The charity gala ended 2 days ago, but its aftermath still echoed in both their lives. Daniel couldn't stop replaying the moment he saw her, the shock in her eyes, the faint tremor in her hands as she tried to pretend he wasn't there. He told himself to forget it. He failed. When his phone buzzed the next morning, his mother's name flashed on the screen. He almost didn't answer. "Daniel," her familiar voice hummed through the line, soft yet commanding. "I need a favor." He exhaled. "What kind of favor?" "The foundation dinner next week. You are coming, right?" A pause. "I wasn't planning to." "Your brother and his wife will be there." So will the press. Daniel, you know how they talk. You can't show up alone again. He pinched the bridge of his nose. Mother. She cut him off with a sigh. Just bring someone, dear. Anyone. I'm tired of reporters asking if I'm worried you'll die in that glass tower of yours. When the call ended, Daniel leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. He could almost hear fate laughing. Anyone. And somehow, only one face came to mind. Lila was wiping down tables when her boss called from the kitchen. Grant. There's a man here asking for you. Her stomach dropped. She stepped out front and froze. Daniel Reid stood by the counter, out of place among neon menus and chipped tiles. His suit was simple this time, almost casual, but his presence filled the room all the same. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice sharper than she meant. He gave a small, uncertain smile. I need your help. You have the wrong person. She turned back toward the counter, but his next words stopped her cold. It's not about money this time. She faced him slowly. Then what is it about? Appearance, he said quietly. My mother's hosting a foundation dinner next week. I need someone to go with me. She raised a brow. A date. He hesitated. A companion. Lila crossed her arms. And you thought I'd be the right person for that? I thought you were the only one who wouldn't play pretend. That silenced her for a moment. The sincerity in his tone, gentle raw, didn't sound like the man who'd once offered her money. I'll pay you for your time, of course. She shot him a look, and he stopped mid-sentence. I'll owe you one, he corrected quickly. Her lips curved despite herself. That's better. Later that week, Lila found herself standing in front of a hotel ballroom mirror, wearing a borrowed gown and nerves. She couldn't believe she'd agreed. Daniel appeared beside her reflection, adjusting his cufflinks. When their eyes met in the mirror, he smiled faintly. You look, he paused, searching for the right word. Honest. Lila blinked. Honest. He chuckled softly. Most women I've brought to these things looked like they were auditioning for a role. You look like yourself. She tilted her head. Is that supposed to be a compliment? It's the best one I know how to give, he said quietly. For the first time, she saw it, the vulnerability behind his charm. The loneliness she'd sensed in the diner wasn't imagined. At the dinner, cameras flashed, champagne flowed, and Daniel's hand rested gently on her back as they moved through the crowd. He introduced her not as an assistant, not as an actress, but as a friend. The simplicity of it disarmed her. His mother watched from across the table, her expression a mix of surprise and approval. She's lovely, she whispered later, when Daniel leaned in to help Lila with her chair. And she looks at you like she sees you, not your name. Daniel's chest tightened. That's what scares me, he murmured back. When the night ended, they walked out into cool air. The city shimmered in gold reflections around them. Thank you, he said, hands in his pockets. For coming. You made it bearable. Just bearable, she teased. He smiled. Slightly better than bearable. Lila laughed, soft, genuine. You're welcome. A pause lingered, tender and heavy. He looked at her like he was memorizing something. Can I drive you home? She hesitated, then nodded. Sure. In the car, silence filled the space between them, comfortable this time. Halfway to her apartment, rain began to fall, slow, rhythmic, gentle. Daniel glanced over. You hate me a little less now? She smiled faintly. I never hated you. I just didn't understand you. And now? I still don't, she said honestly, but I think I want to. His fingers tightened on the steering wheel, emotion flickering across his face before he hit it. For once, Daniel Reid had no clever reply. Do you believe people deserve second chances when they genuinely change, or are some first impressions too strong to undo? Comment below. Could you trust someone who once tried to buy your heart but later tried to earn it? The night after the gala, Daniel couldn't sleep. He'd spent years treating relationships like mergers, strategic, efficient, disposable. Yet one night with Lila had left him restless, replaying every small, unguarded moment. Her laughter had been the first genuine sound in his life in months. Her honesty, The kind that didn't need polish or apology, had shaken him more than he'd admit. He wanted to thank her again, but the thought of calling felt too revealing. So instead, he drove to the diner the next morning. When Lila saw him through the window, her stomach twisted in confusion. Part of her was glad, another part wanted to hide in the kitchen until he left. "Morning," he said, voice softer than she remembered. "Coffee?" she asked automatically. "Please." She poured him a cup and tried to pretend her hands weren't trembling. "You don't usually show up unannounced," she said finally. He looked up at her with something like guilt in his eyes. "You made me remember what real feels like. I'm not used to that." Lila blinked. "That sounds lonely." "It is," he said quietly. The honesty in his tone startled her. For once, there was no arrogance, no edge, just truth. When the lunch rush ended, Daniel was still there. He offered to help her carry supplies to the back. She laughed. "You? Carry boxes? Those hands don't even look like they know what dust is." He smirked. "You'd be surprised." But when he lifted one of the crates, he winced, just slightly, but enough for her to notice. "You okay?" she asked. He hesitated, then rolled up his sleeve. A faint scar ran along his wrist. "I fell," he said lightly. Lila frowned. "That's not a fall scar. That's a break." Daniel's expression darkened for the briefest moment. "My ex-wife and I had a fight. She threw something. I caught it." Silence stretched between them. The vulnerability in his confession surprised even him. "I'm sorry," Lila said quietly. "No one deserves that." He gave a small, humorless laugh. "She said I treated love like a business deal. Maybe she was right." Lila shook her head. Maybe she didn't understand that control was the only way you knew how to survive. Their eyes met, holding a depth of unspoken understanding that made the air thicken. Later that evening, they sat outside behind the diner, sharing the last of the pie her coworker had saved. The city hummed around them. Lila hesitated, then spoke. "Can I tell you something?" "Anything," he said. "My mom's been sick for a while." "The bills," she trailed off, wrapping her arms around herself. "Sometimes I work 3 shifts in a row just to keep her medicine going. It's why I didn't throw that check away right away." Daniel listened, eyes softening. "You shouldn't have to carry that alone." She smiled sadly. "We don't always get to choose what we carry." He wanted to reach for her hand, but didn't. Instead, he asked softly, "Why didn't you take the money?" "Because then I'd owe you something. And I don't ever want to owe anyone again." He nodded slowly. "I get that." She looked at him curiously. "You do." "My father was the same way," Daniel said. "He made everything transactional, even family. When he died, I promised myself I'd never need anyone. Guess I overcorrected." The quiet between them was fragile, sacred. 2 people who'd built walls out of necessity now sat side by side, realizing how much it cost to keep them up. The moonlight made Lila's eyes glimmer. Daniel found himself saying what he hadn't planned to. "You know, I used to think honesty was weakness." She smiled faintly. "And now?" "Now I think it's the only thing that feels like strength." Their eyes held, too long, too deep. Then Lila stood abruptly, heart racing. "I should go check on my mom." Daniel rose too. "Can I drive you?" She shook her head gently. "You've done enough. For now." He smiled, understanding she wasn't rejecting him, she was protecting herself. "Then at least promise you'll let me help sometime." She looked up at him, searching his face. "You already are," she whispered. That night, Daniel lay awake staring at the ceiling, realizing something that terrified him. For the first time since his marriage ended, he wanted to care again. And for the first time in her life, Lila wasn't afraid to be seen. What neither knew was that truth, the very thing drawing them together, would soon test them harder than either could imagine. Rain tapped softly against the windows of Daniel's car as he pulled up outside the diner again that Friday night. The neon sign flickered against the drizzle, and inside, Lila sat by the counter with a mug of coffee cupped between her hands, waiting for the storm to let up. He hadn't planned to stop. But something about the way the rain blurred the city, how it made everything softer, felt like permission. When he pushed open the door, the bell chimed, and she turned startled, then smiled despite herself. You again. He held up a paper bag. Peace offering. Thai food. Thought you could use a break. She blinked, then laughed quietly. Do CEOs do takeout now? Only when it matters, he said, his tone light but his eyes serious. They sat in the back booth, her favorite, tucked behind the jukebox that hadn't worked in years. Between bites of noodles and quiet laughter, the conversation unfolded like something fragile and unplanned. Do you ever get tired of pretending everything's fine? She asked suddenly. Daniel paused, chopsticks in midair. Every day, he admitted. But pretending is easier than explaining. Lila nodded slowly. I get that. People think being shy means being weak. It's not. It's just safer sometimes. He studied her face, the strength behind the gentleness. You're not weak, Lila. You're the only person I've met who's not afraid to be kind. She smiled, a little shyly. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. They talked for hours, about the little things that no one ever asks. Her favorite season, autumn, because it smells like possibility. His least favorite sound, the buzz of fluorescent lights in empty offices. Her dream of studying nursing someday. His secret wish to start over somewhere no one knew his name. By the time they realized the rain had stopped, the city had gone quiet. Looks like it's finally over, she said softly. He looked at her, really looked, and something inside him broke open. No, he murmured. It just started. A few nights later, Daniel invited her to his home. He hadn't done that in years. The penthouse gleamed like a museum, all glass and cold light, but the moment she stepped in, it felt different. This place is beautiful, she said softly, running a hand over the piano in the corner. But it feels lonely. He exhaled a laugh. That's because it is. She turned, meeting his eyes. You could fill it, you know. With what? With people. With love. With noise. He smiled faintly. I wouldn't know where to start. Start small, she said. Maybe, with dinner that doesn't come in a bag. He grinned. Are you offering to cook? Only if you promise not to fire me if I burn it. Dinner was clumsy, but perfect. She wore his apron, too big for her, and burned the sauce twice. He laughed, really laughed, the kind of unguarded sound that startled even him. When they sat on the floor afterward, eating from mismatched plates, something unspoken hummed in the air. Lila reached for her glass, her fingers brushing his. Neither pulled away. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. You've changed this place. How? He hesitated. You made it feel alive again. Her breath caught. You've changed me too. How? He asked, eyes searching hers. You made me feel seen. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was electric, sacred. He reached out, slowly, giving her time to move away. She didn't. His thumb traced the edge of her cheekbone, soft as breath. Lila. She looked up at him, eyes bright, heart trembling. Don't say anything you don't mean. I never meant anything more, he said. And then he kissed her, gently, carefully, as though she were something precious he was afraid to break. The world fell away for a heartbeat. When they finally pulled apart, her forehead rested against his, their breathing uneven. Daniel, she whispered. What are we doing? He smiled softly. I don't know. But for the first time, I don't want to control it. They didn't label it. They didn't have to. What grew between them was quiet but undeniable, an ache that felt like healing. The next morning, she left early, leaving a note on the counter in looping handwriting. Thank you for dinner. For the laughter. For letting me be myself. He stared at it for a long time, smiling. Something in him, something long dead, had started to bloom again. But beneath that warmth lingered fear. Because love, once lost, teaches you one thing above all: it never comes without a cost. For 3 weeks, they'd fallen into a quiet rhythm, stolen moments between her shifts, text messages sent at midnight, the kind of gentle happiness that makes you forget to be afraid. Lila had even started to believe it might last. Then one evening, everything changed. She arrived at Daniel's office unannounced, holding a paper bag of sandwiches and 2 coffees. Fuel, she said with a grin. For your late-night empire building. But as she stepped out of the elevator, laughter drifted from behind his glass door, a woman's laughter warm and familiar. Through the glass, she saw Daniel standing beside a tall brunette in an elegant suit. The woman's hand rested on his arm, her smile intimate. Lila froze. Daniel said something she couldn't hear, and the woman leaned closer, whispering something in his ear before brushing a kiss against his cheek. Lila's heart clenched. She didn't wait to see more. The coffees hit the trash before she reached the street. When Daniel finally noticed her missed calls later that night, he was confused. He called, texted, nothing. By morning, worry had turned to panic. He drove to the diner, heart pounding. She saw him through the window and turned away. He entered anyway. Lila. Her voice was steady but cold. Don't. Please. What's going on? I should ask you that. I don't. I saw you, she said quietly. With her. The woman in your office. He blinked, stunned. That was Claire. My company's lawyer. We were going over a contract. And the kiss on the cheek? She asked, her voice breaking. Was that part of the contract too? Daniel's throat tightened. She's married. It wasn't. Stop. She shook her head. I don't want excuses. Then what do you want? She swallowed hard. To not feel like an idiot for believing you meant any of this. Lila, I did. Then why does it feel like I'm the only one who didn't know the rules? Her voice cracked, and something inside him shattered. He reached for her hand, but she pulled back. Don't, she whispered. You said you didn't want to control it. Maybe you just don't want to lose it. Lila, please. You wanted someone who wouldn't play pretend, she said softly, tears in her eyes. But you're still pretending, Daniel. You're pretending you know what love is. He opened his mouth, but no words came. She turned away before he could stop her, leaving him in the middle of the diner, the same place he'd first seen her, but this time he was the one left behind. That night, Daniel returned home to silence. The note she'd left weeks ago, "Thank you for letting me be myself," still sat on his counter. He picked it up, staring at it until the ink blurred. He'd spent his life mastering control, but no deal, no strategy could fix what had just broken. For the first time in years, Daniel Reid cried. Meanwhile, Lila sat by her mother's bedside, pretending to read a magazine. Her mother's hand rested weakly on hers. You've been quiet lately, her mom said softly. Something wrong? Lila forced a smile. Just tired. Her mother gave her a knowing look. You've met someone, haven't you? Lila's eyes filled with tears. I did. I thought he was different. And now, I don't know who he is. Her mother squeezed her hand gently. Maybe he's just someone learning how to be real. People like that, they make mistakes. Lila wiped her eyes. What if I can't forgive him? Then you'll never know if he could have been the one who stayed. Days passed. Daniel sent flowers, texts, even a handwritten letter, all unanswered. He finally stopped trying, realizing that maybe the only way to love her now was to let her be free. One evening, he sat alone in the same booth where they'd eaten Thai food. The empty seat across from him felt like a wound. He whispered to the air, I wanted to give you everything. I just didn't know how. The jukebox, dead for years, crackled suddenly, then hummed with faint static before sputtering out again. Daniel smiled bitterly. Even broken things remember what music feels like. A week later, he received a letter in the mail. The return address, the diner. Inside, just one line, written in her looping handwriting. I don't hate you, but I don't trust you yet. It wasn't forgiveness. But it wasn't goodbye, either. And for Daniel, that single line was enough to hope again. The city had shifted seasons almost overnight, autumn leaves scattering across sidewalks, golden light softening everything it touched. It should have been beautiful. But for Lila, the world felt muted, like color drained from a photograph. She moved through her days at the diner in autopilot, greeting customers, smiling when expected, laughing when she could. But the quiet moments, between shifts, between breaths, were unbearable. Because that's when she remembered him. The sound of his laugh, the warmth of his voice, The way he looked at her like he'd finally found something real. And the way it all fell apart. One evening after closing, her coworker Sam wiped the counter and glanced at her. "You okay?" She forced a smile. "Fine." "Lila," he said gently, "I've seen you cry over spilled coffee, but not over people. Whoever he was, he mattered, huh?" Her throat tightened. He did. Too much, maybe. Sam hesitated. "You know, not everyone gets it right the first time. Sometimes people just need a second chance to prove they mean it." She sighed. "You sound like my mom." "Smart woman, then." They shared a small laugh. But when Lila left the diner that night, her smile faded the moment she stepped into the cool night air. The letter Daniel had sent, "I wanted to give you everything. I just didn't know how," replayed in her mind like a heartbeat. Maybe he really didn't know how. Maybe that was the point. Across the city, Daniel sat alone in his office, staring at the same skyline that used to make him feel invincible. Now it just looked empty. He'd built an empire out of ambition and precision. But he couldn't fix what mattered most with logic or contracts. He opened his drawer and pulled out the note she'd written. "I don't hate you. But I don't trust you yet." He traced the words with his thumb, whispering to himself, "Then I'll just have to earn it." The next morning, Daniel did something he'd never done before. He took a day off. He showed up at the diner just after sunrise, before it opened. Lila was inside, wiping down tables, her hair tied up messily, a soft hum escaping her lips as she worked. He watched for a moment, quiet, reverent, then knocked gently on the glass. Her head snapped up. Their eyes met. She froze, rag in hand. "Daniel. Can I come in?" After a long pause, she nodded. He stepped inside, hands in his pockets, voice careful. "I didn't come here to defend myself. Or to convince you. I came because I realized I never said what you deserved to hear." Lila swallowed hard. "Which is?" "That I'm sorry," he said simply. "Not for the misunderstanding, for the way I made it easy for you to believe I'd lie. I've spent so long being guarded that even honesty sounded rehearsed coming from me. You didn't deserve that." She looked at him, eyes shining. "Why are you here, Daniel? Really?" "Because every time I tried to forget you, I realized I was only remembering you more." He took a slow breath. "You asked me once what I was afraid of. It's this. Needing someone. You. Because you make me want to be better, not richer, not stronger, better." Her hand trembled around the rag. "That sounds like a line." "It's not," he said softly. "It's me, finally telling the truth." Lila turned away, blinking fast. "You hurt me." "I know," he said quietly. "And I'll carry that for as long as it takes you to heal." Silence filled the room, heavy, raw, real. She turned back to him slowly. "What if I can't forgive you?" "Then I'll still be grateful I met you," he said. "Because you showed me what love could be when it isn't about control." Her chest tightened. He wasn't trying to win her, he was letting her choose. She stepped closer, studying his face. The man who once hid behind pride now stood before her completely open, unguarded. "Daniel," she whispered, "what if I'm scared too?" He smiled faintly. "Then we can be scared together." Outside, dawn broke, soft, golden light spilling across the diner floor. Lila exhaled shakily, tears glinting in her eyes. "I don't know if I can trust you yet." He nodded. "Then start with coffee. We'll work our way up from there." Her laugh broke through her tears, small, real, hopeful. She turned, poured 2 cups, and set one in front of him. "Black, right?" He smiled. "You remember." "I remember everything," she said softly. They sat together in silence, sipping coffee as the sun climbed higher. Not lovers, not strangers, but something new. A beginning, fragile but alive. For the first time in both their lives, silence didn't mean emptiness. It meant peace. When love breaks, is it braver to walk away, or to stay and rebuild? Comment below, would you have opened that diner door like Daniel, or kept it locked like Lila? A week had passed since the morning coffee at the diner, 1 week of cautious beginnings and quiet hope. Daniel started stopping by every day, not with gifts or grand gestures, but with presence. Sometimes he'd wash dishes when the staff was short-handed. Sometimes he'd just sit at the corner booth, helping her balance the day's receipts while she teased him about his handwriting. He didn't push. He didn't rush. He just stayed. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the space between them began to heal. One evening, as the diner lights dimmed and the last customer left, Lila leaned against the counter, exhaustion softening her features. "You know," she said, "you're terrible at pretending to like this coffee." He chuckled. "You noticed. You flinch every time you sip it." He smiled, resting his elbows on the counter. "I like what comes with it." Lila's heart stuttered. "Meaning?" He met her eyes, warm, unwavering. "You." Her breath caught. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything unspoken: apology, forgiveness, love. She looked down, tracing the edge of the counter. "You really mean that?" "I've never meant anything more," he said quietly. A moment of silence hung between them before she whispered, "I still don't know if I'm ready to start over." He nodded. "Then let's not start over. Let's just start now." Something about that, the gentleness, the patience, undid her completely. Without realizing it, she reached across the counter, her fingers brushing his. He caught her hand, just for a moment, and smiled. "See? We're already starting." That weekend, Daniel invited her to the Foundation's fall charity event, the same one his mother had once begged him to attend with a date. This time, it wasn't about appearances. It was about truth. When Lila arrived, the room stilled. She wore a simple dress the color of dawn, her hair loose around her shoulders. Daniel met her halfway, his expression soft with pride, not possession. "You came," he said. "You asked," she replied, smiling. "And this time I wanted to." The evening unfolded differently than before. There were no masks, no pretending. Daniel didn't introduce her as anyone's role or label, just as Lila. When his mother approached, Lila braced herself, but Mrs. Reid only smiled knowingly. "Thank you," she said softly, "for giving my son back his smile." Lila blinked. "I didn't." "Oh, you did," the older woman interrupted gently. "Sometimes it takes a stranger to remind us what home feels like." Lila's throat tightened. "He's special." Mrs. Reid nodded. "So are you." Later that night, Daniel and Lila stepped outside for air. The city skyline shimmered, the same way it had on their first fake night together. "Déjà vu," he teased. "Almost," she said. "Except this time, no one's pretending." He laughed softly. "Thank God for that." They stood side by side, the wind lifting her hair, brushing against his hand. He turned to her, his expression unreadable but full of feeling. "I used to think love was about control," he said quietly. "About knowing where things were headed. You taught me it's about choosing the unknown anyway." She smiled through tears. "I used to think love was something that happened to other people. You made me believe maybe it could happen to me." He took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "Lila, I don't want a contract, or a game, or a lie. I just want to build something real, messy, imperfect, ours." Her eyes glistened. "You sure you're ready for messy?" He grinned. "With you? Always." And when he kissed her this time, it wasn't tentative or uncertain. It was full, deep, and certain, the kind of kiss that seals more than affection. It sealed a promise. Weeks turned into months, and life began to weave them together in small, beautiful ways. Daniel started spending Sundays at Lila's mother's apartment, learning how to cook from the woman who claimed he needed flavor in his soul. Lila began studying again, encouraged by Daniel's quiet support. "You've been taking care of everyone else long enough," he'd said. "It's your turn." And every evening, no matter how chaotic their worlds got, they found time to meet, sometimes at the diner, sometimes at his penthouse, sometimes halfway between. No grand declarations. No conditions. Just presence. Just love. One night, as they sat by his window watching snow fall over the city, Daniel leaned back, a soft smile tugging at his lips. "You know," he said, "it's funny." "What is?" "I offered you $1,000 once to pretend to be my wife." Lila chuckled. "Yeah, worst business proposal ever." He grinned. "Maybe. But best decision I ever made." She rolled her eyes playfully. You're impossible. He leaned in, his voice low and sincere. Maybe. But I'm impossibly in love with you. Her laughter melted into a smile, her hand finding his. That's the only offer I'll ever take. Just like that night months ago, under city lights, surrounded by everything fake, they found something real. Only this time, there were no contracts, no questions, no price. Just two people who chose love, finally, fully, freely. Do you believe real love begins when pride ends? Comment below, what moment in their journey hit you hardest? The first offer, the heartbreak, or the final choice to love anyway? The end.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.